Hillary Topper here for We Are Triathletes, and it gives me so much pleasure to introduce you to Julie Moss. Julie wrote this book, Crawl of Fame, and it's going to be released within a couple of weeks, so go out and get your copy. I read it. I loved it. It was so inspirational, and it's for both runners, swimmers, cyclists, or triathletes. Anybody who does endurance sports, this book is for you. It's so motivational. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Julie. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Hillary. Thank you so much for those kind words about my book and just for taking the time to have me on your webinar.
Absolutely. So let's start from the beginning, okay? You did this Ironman as a college senior research project. Can you just walk us through this whole thing that you were thinking before you got involved in the Ironman?
Sure. I mean, I don't want to give away too much from our readers, but in a nutshell, I saw the Ironman on television and I thought, wow, that's crazy. But it's in Hawaii, which I had such an affinity for, being a surfer girl. And there were these gorgeous men in Speedos hanging out. And I thought, that would be kind of fun. Literally, it intrigued me. It captured my imagination and I couldn't let it go. And I needed a senior project as a kinesiology major. And that just kept coming back to me. So I thought, why not? Why not have the Ironman be my senior project? And I sold it to my advisors. I sold it to my mom. And I proceeded then to treat it like any other school project. I ignored it. And I ignored it for a really long time. And all of a sudden, it was within about 2 months before the race date. And I finally said, okay, pressure's on. I got to figure out how to train for this race.
Now, were you athletic? I mean, you must have been athletic before you did this.
I was active. I mean, I think surfing kind of helped me develop as a swimmer might develop. I started surfing at 14 and I continued surfing through college. I was surfing. I was doing a little bit of running. I put on the freshman 15 yogurt machine, all you can eat, put on some weight. So I started doing a little bit of running and I had a bike that I used for commuting. I was not a competitive athlete in school. Our school didn't even have a swimming pool. So I really was just an active, adventurous kind of girl.
So then you had, you do this Ironman in Kona and you have Worldwide of Sports following you. How did you feel when you were being followed by them? Like, what were you thinking in your head?
Well, what I was thinking was I kind of liked the attention. And I figured if the camera van was on me, then I must be doing okay. So that was a positive. And I really felt pretty relaxed about the whole process. I mean, they were fun. They would kind of come up, distract me a little bit. I had no idea what it would be like to see myself when things got rough. And halfway through the marathon, things started to get rough. And I pretty much at that point blocked out any thought of a camera. So then seeing myself on ABC World of Sports, within a couple weeks after the race concluded, it was pretty intimidating to see myself so vulnerable, so in such a rough place. So where they had been my friends and my buddies, I then eventually blocked them out. And then it was almost a surprise to see that the cameras had been on me, so tightly for so long.
Amazing. Now, when you got to, 15 yards or so before the finish line and you collapsed, right? What were you thinking in terms of getting through that finish line? Like, what was going through your head at that point when you collapsed?
Yeah, that was like the 4th time I'd fallen. So I was getting kind of used to falling and getting up at that point. That 4th time when I sort of went to my standard procedure of trying to get back up, my arms wouldn't support me anymore. And I really was without options. And I could see the finish line. I mean, I had moments before I thought of throwing my arms up in the air and looking like every other victorious woman I'd ever seen on that iconic sports show. And then next thing I know, I'm on the ground and I can't get up. And the eventual winner, Kathleen McCartney, has just gone by me. So what I was thinking at that moment was I was heartbroken. I was scared. And it took me a couple of moments to sort of just figure out that my only option was to crawl. And within maybe just literally seconds, it went from being heartbroken and despair to, oh my gosh, I have the chance to accomplish finishing this race. Finishing is what's important now. I thought it was all about winning and the glory of that. And quickly it switched to being about just the desire to put my hand across the line and finish it. So it really changed something within me as it was happening.
And it changed the whole world of triathlon and endurance sports. Just seeing you finish, you know, just seeing you with that motivation and drive to get through it.
Yeah, it was on such a deep level. And I think we go there in triathlons. I mean, of every distance, especially as beginners, we get to that point where we have to make a decision like, how am I going to keep going? How am I going to find it within myself to get one foot in front of the other? And I think what the camera caught was my having to go deep within myself and still finding a little bit more and being so vulnerable and being able to be so just present enough to find a way to go forward and not care what it looked like, not care that if I was going to win anymore, to just know that I was getting this done any way that I could. And I think that's what clicked with people. I think they wanted to feel what it would be like to be so challenged to be to the point where they would be willing to possibly crawl to get to their goal.
So with that in mind, what advice would you give someone doing something out of their comfort zone?
Well, I think the fact that they're willing to go out of their comfort zone is key. Because then that's where you start discovering what you're made of. It's really easy to sit there, in the comfort of your home and think about doing something crazy like a triathlon. It's another thing to actually get out there and do it. And that's when you start stripping away the layers of what you think it's supposed to look like, the kind of training you're supposed to do, the kind of equipment you're supposed to have. All those layers start to peel away, and you see that what's left is just this just deep desire to know that you are worth the effort. And I think that's one of the pieces I got early on, that my self-worth was worth fighting for. And that doesn't come from the comfort of your living room. That comes from getting out there in the trenches, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone and just doing it.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think about, there's a whole group of us out there, us middle-agers, who are getting into endurance sports. Is that being ridiculous, or are we, I don't know, what do you think?
I think it's very age appropriate to kind of discover triathlon at middle age. And I'm just going to say middle age is a very broad term. I feel like I'm still middle age. So it's a broad spectrum. But I think that when you come into the sport a little bit older, you've got a lot of things in place. You've got probably your career is kind of in front of you. And even if it's your brand new career, you've got career constraints, you've got family constraints, you've got relationship constraints. So within that, you have to find a way to fit in 3 sports, and sometimes 3 brand new sports. And you also have to you have the commitment, you kind of have figured out the way to make your life work. So you can start applying some of those basic skills to adding in this new sport. I think having the camaraderie of a team is kind of key, especially for beginning triathletes. You need to kind of go to a pool and know that other people are swimming, maybe for the first time, learning how to be a master swimmer, to go on group rides, to do group runs, to take advantage of a community that's going to support you, because this is tough. It's not easy. So I would say, just being a more mature woman or man coming into this sport is a real advantage.
Interesting. Now, when things get rough, Okay. I mean, I'm sure after this happened to you in 1982, you've had so many different scenarios where it just got very, very rough. What what advice would you tell someone when things get rough during a race? Any race. It could be a running race or a swimming race or a triathlon.
Okay, when things get tough, I think you have to have a plan B. Plan A can be whatever. You want a certain time for that 10K. You want, it's about time, placing in your age group. You might have these lofty goals, plan A. Plan B is finish. If you always got your plan B to go to, that that it's okay just to get to the finish line. And it's not just okay. It really, I call it sometimes some training days and some races are just about building character. They're not about building your race resume. They're about building your character. And you have to be able to just get to the finish line. So yeah, there are rough spots. I tend to try and mimic the rough spots in training so that I don't have as many of them in racing. But it doesn't always work out that way. Triathlon is really about navigating the rough spots. That's a big part of this sport. And you have to be willing, again, like we mentioned earlier, to go out of your comfort zone, to be pushed out of your comfort zone. And when you start managing the rough spots and you start coming out of those valleys and come back out and to the next, ride a peak for a while, maybe it's a plateau, but you're going to go back down into a little valley. How you manage the deeper valleys, the rough spots, is really about that is showing your inner strength, your ability to just kind of push yourself in a way that you might not have ever guessed you could. That's the shining silver lining of our sport.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What do you say to people who say to you, I want to PR this race, or every race they want to PR? Is it about that, or is it about just finishing and finishing strong?
Well, like I said, it can be about going for a PR. Good on you. If you think you've done the training and you're ready to step up and this race suits you and you think you can go get a PR, great. But what happens if you get a flat tire? What if you get two flats? What if your goggles get knocked off on the swim? What if the PR goes out the window early or late? What are you going to do? Obviously, when your PR dream evaporates late in the race, it's a little easier to deal with than when it happens early. I mean, a flat tire within the first couple miles of a bike and, 15, 20 minutes to get it handled, that's going to evaporate any dream of a PR. Do you quit? I hope not. I think that's, so it's both. Okay, go for your PR, but be ready to get to the finish line.
Awesome. Thank you. So I have a question from the group, and someone asked, how did you do on your thesis?
I think I got a C, only because, A for effort on the race, but the research probably was a little lacking. And at this point, I wasn't attending classes anymore. I'd just come back from Kona. I'm on Wide World of Sports. I'm a little full of myself. And I probably just did the bare minimum to get the research done and sent in. So a C was okay.
Awesome.
It was one of my typical grades. It wasn't like it was a bad grade for me.
Great. Okay, so another question I have is, how do you motivate yourself? I mean, you get up, you're tired in the morning. How do you get yourself out there every day? I work with a group of runners, and people ask me that all the time, and I'm just at a loss. So I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, the fact that you even say a group of runners, you work with a group of runners, when you've got someone who's waiting for you, you have to be accountable. You have to show up on time. Accountability is a huge part of motivation. So that's why I think group workouts really are just totally motivating, and they do work. If the master's workout, swim workout starts at 7, you better be there by 7. And that means you stop thinking about poor me, I have to get out the door, to I don't want to be late. Because I hate walking into a swim workout, missing the warm up and having to start right with the main set. That's a bummer. So those kind of things start to build accountability. I used to run with a running group, and if you were 5 minutes late, they were gone. I mean, so it taught me, okay, I have to be on time. So I think having the group motivation is great. I think that really, really helps.
So what was it like being married to Mark Alyn? I mean, here he's like an amazing triathlete also. It must have been so competitive in your house. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I always sort of thought he was the champion athlete. I mean, I was sort of the accidental icon and had to figure out how to become a better athlete. Right out of the gate, he was a diamond in the rough, and it didn't take very long for him to polish up his edges. So what I felt almost with Mark was that he was so disciplined. He put so much into his workouts that it almost took the pressure off me. It's like, you know, he's the champ here. I'm just happy to coast along on some of those workouts. And even though later on when I realized that I was getting more and more, not competitive with him, but kind of having more of a desire to be the best athlete that I could, what we had in common was a shared lifestyle. And we got to sit around the table and we talk about, you know, well, I got to see you when you were on your way back on that ride. I got a glimpse of you. I mean, we weren't trying to train together, and I wasn't really competitive with him. I was kind of in awe of him and his work ethic, and just appreciated, if that's what it takes to be #1 in the world, I'm okay with being top 10.
Now, you both had a son together. And how was it for him having these two amazing parents? I read that he's an athlete as well, a triathlete. So can you talk a little bit about your son?
Yeah, I think we never pressured our son to get into triathlons. I mean, he certainly could have if he wanted to. I think he was probably about 10 or 11 when he did his first triathlon. I was doing race announcing at a race that Scott Tinley puts on in California called Scott Tinley's Adventures. So I was there as an announcer, and it was my weekend with Matt's, my son, so he came along, and I said, well, if you want to jump in, you can. And so he did. And it was really cute because Scott Tinley was leading the kids out on the mountain bike and leading the first kids out onto the run, and Matt's was right with them. And I thought that was such a beautiful kind of moment for one of the top triathletes in the world to be escorting my son on his first triathlon. And he was winning the race until like right at the end he got passed. It was like, okay, your mama knows how that feels. So here I'm announcing it. When he's getting passed, you know, it's just one of those moments. So he didn't show a lot of interest in the sport other than just kind of occasionally. I think he was kind of finding his own way, something that wasn't under the shadow of his mom and dad. So he got really into water polo, and he liked rock climbing and just different things. And he didn't come to triathlon until after he'd done an endurance hike from the Canadian border to the Mexican border. It's the Pacific Crest Trail. Your members will know it from the book Wild, the movie Wild with Reese Witherspoon. And so I read that book. I got intrigued by it. I know my son and I talked about that a lot, and he ended up doing it in 2016. And when he finished the Pacific Crest Trail, I just remember thinking, if ever you've learned about grit, you've learned it now, which is a huge part of doing an Ironman. You might, and I think we had a conversation, this might be a good time for you to explore triathlon. He was 23 years old, and it was a good time. So he ended up doing his first Ironman race in Korea. He traveled with me. I was an ambassador for the race in 2017. He came with me, and he qualified in his first Ironman, and that was 2017 in September. Fast forward now, here a year later, and he and I will be competing in the 40th anniversary of the Ironman together. And I can't, that's a chapter I couldn't have written in the book. I couldn't have scripted that any better.
That is so incredible. I'm so excited, and I can't wait to watch it. I have another question from the group. What do you find more helpful, training with a competitive group of athletes who are pushing each other, or a supportive group that are encouraging each other?
I think there's elements of both. What I tend to ride with a strictly cycling group. There's a couple triathletes in there, but mostly they're just recreational cyclists. So I know they're steady and they're safe. and they like to have certain sections that they time trial on a bike course. So I can get competitive if I want to, but I'm not feeling any pressure to. So I sort of structure it that I can pick and choose when I feel competitive within a workout. And I think that works best for me. So I think there's elements of both. You should be with supportive people who do not get upset if you are having a great day and you want to push the pace and drop them. It's all right. But also, I think if you're always with a competitive group and you're always getting pushed, it can burn you out.
Okay. Tell me about another experience that you had that either changed your life or gave you an aha moment.
Oh, that's a good question. Through triathlon, I always sort of let it just sort of come to me. I haven't really, some of my adventures have just happened spontaneously. I would say the writing of the book Crawl of Fame was something that I specifically set out to do. And the process of that has been, if it hasn't been life-changing, it's been so enlightening to kind of be able to chronicle my life in a way that I'm willing to share it with the world as sort of just something that I can give to my son to say, here's at least what I can remember of, the early days of the sport. I think to just have, again, the maturity and the confidence to say, I don't know if this is the world's best story, but it's my story. And that's all I can do is share it in a very transparent and vulnerable way, be vulnerable, because that's what gets me every time I hear a great story. It's like when someone lets you into their heart, lets you into their secret space. I feel that's an honor and a privilege. So I wanted to kind of offer that to the readers. So that has been, if not life-changing, to put myself out there in a very public way, sort of separate from racing, was really kind of one of those moments. Now I talk about putting myself outside my comfort zone. That was really uncomfortable. So I really knew I had to do it. And I'm just so proud that I got it done. I got to the finish line.
It's funny how we all internalize things that we think are embarrassing or not great about what happened, but yet they're so motivational and so inspiring to other people. Like what you did was just amazing. And your career has been incredible. This book is fantastic. I want you all to go out and get a copy of it. I loved it. And can you tell everyone how to go out and buy a copy of this?
Sure, Hillary. Actually, go on Amazon, Amazon.com. And it's shipping October 2nd. If we order early, it pushes my numbers up and I could maybe end up on a bestseller list. Wouldn't that be great? So yeah, I think that's the easiest way. And I have to tell you, every one of your members, and if I get a chance to come out to Long Island, the New York area, and we can get together with your team members, I will be there to sign every one of their books. So that's a promise. And yeah, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to push my book and just to connect with first-time athletes. I have to tell you, one of the moments speaking of an aha moment, when I started doing race announcing, my focus stopped being just on the pros and the first athletes across the line to the last athletes across the line, to making sure that their experience was as life-changing for them as it was for me to do my first triathlon. And I feel like if this book can connect, both ends of the spectrum of a triathlon community, then I really will have done a good job. But yeah, I appreciate so much the courage for somebody to try something new, especially a sport that I love, and to have the opportunity to, again, push outside their comfort zone and realize they have so much more inside.